Hi, everyone. Welcome to Perennia's second webinar of the Idea to Market series, provided to you by the Agri-Food Funding Program. Today, we will be learning about the business side of product development. My name is Emily Page, and I'm a food scientist with Perennia Food and Agriculture. We offer a wide array of services to support Nova Scotia's agriculture and seafood sectors, such as food safety, agriculture extension, mobile wine bottling, and analytical testing of cannabis foods and beverages. Here at the Perennia Food and Beverage Innovation Center, we work with clients on product development, process improvement, nutritional labeling, and shelf life determination. First, I would like to introduce our guest presenter, Gary Morton of Morton Horticultural Associates. Gary has worked in agriculture for 40 years, helping farms and food businesses across Canada find new value, success, and profit from what they do. Today's webinar will cover market validation, customer feedback, pricing your product, preparing for scale-up, and where you can get help. Lastly, just a housekeeping note for using Zoom webinars. If you have a question during the session, please use the Q&A button, which is at the bottom of your Zoom window. I'll be monitoring the questions throughout the webinar for Gary. However, we will answer most of them at the end of the presentation. This webinar will be recorded and posted to our YouTube channel, so you can replay it later or share it with your friends and colleagues who couldn't join us today. And with that, I'll pass it off to you, Gary.
Thank you, Emily. And welcome everyone to our second webinar in the series of Idea to Market. Some of you may have been with us last week when we talked about idea development. And that webinar is available online now if you want to go back and watch it. And I suggest you do, because it helps you prepare for all these webinars as we're going through them, because they're sequential and they build on one another, and it's kind of a step-by-step process. But I just want to quickly review what we did last week. We looked at idea development. We talked about the creative environment in which ideas come from and the world that you actually have to live in with new product development. We looked at idea scouting, which was trying to find new ideas and how you go about finding ideas. We talked about the target customer, which is the one that you need to align your new idea with. And then we looked at idea screening, which was how do you take all these ideas and pull them down into something that you can work with and actually move on to some kind of prototype. This week, what we're looking at is product development in the whole series. And if you're seeing our success map here, you can see that it's the second as we're going through, and we're going to be talking about essential plans next week. And the following week, we'll be looking at launching the product, and which we call aim and fire. But this week with product development, we're going to look at the prototype. We're going to look at product validation. So how do you validate an idea or prototype that you have? And we're going to look at establishing price, or how you look at price, so that you make sure that you can figure out how your product should be properly priced in the market. And then where do you get help to do all this? So in product development, just like we did last time in idea development, you have to start with why. And the why is like, why is this the right product to take to market? And it's a really important question to be asking, because it's so easy to get caught up in all the things that are going on and all the activities that are out there and forget about, why am I doing this? This is a circular process. It's not a linear process, even though it seems like we're following it in a linear process. It's always a constant circular process. Your product prototype, your product validation, you're looking at the price, you're looking at the help, you're actually going back and looking at your target customers, and you're always circulating these things back and forth, because you'll be learning stuff as you're going forward. You don't really know what you don't know as you're going forward. So it is a process of learning, and it is a process of stop and go to a large degree. And you may end up going back to the drawing board many times before you get to where you want to be. You're trying to expand your worldview, and you're in this bubble that I have explained to you before, and this is your world that you're comfortable in. But you really, through product development, you're trying to push yourself to new zones. You're trying to find out what you don't know and things that you totally don't know, and then push yourself to limits where things that you didn't even imagine were possible. And if we think about all the things that have been invented in the world in the last 100 years, I mean, even when people go to the university today, they're probably learning skills for jobs that haven't even been created yet, or problems that haven't been even developed. So it's important to expand your view and keep looking forward all the time. We talked about last time as well about new product choices. And there's the choice of creating a product and then going looking for a customer, which is typically the harder one because you're making a lot of assumptions. You could take a lot more risk on as you move forward, and you have to find a customer for that product. Versus understanding your customer really well, understand their needs, look at the big problems that they have and solve them with some kind of product. And then you're going to have a customer that's ready to buy your product when you actually take it to market. So the first one is taking a product is really product driven, and the other, number two, is customer driven. So the more customer driven you can become, the less risk you're going to have and the better product you're probably going to have coming out on the other end. So when we talk about prototype, as this little cartoon shows, we're bringing your ideas to life. The prototype is all about bringing your ideas to life. Prototype is looking at transforming your ideas into viable products. It's the process of taking that idea that we came up with in the last webinar, and how do we move it forward into something that actually can sell in the marketplace and be successful in the marketplace. A prototype is typically a sample batch of product. It's not like you're going into full production. It's a sample batch of products that you can actually take to the marketplace and test. That's really what we're trying to do now. The prototype is also a starting point. And as many of you will learn, or you have from experience already found out, that the product that you start out with or the idea that you start out with is typically not the one you end up with, because there's so many reiterations of your product as you're going forward. And as we mentioned, you're constantly learning new things, you're discovering things about your product, the market, the customer, and that's all changing the product as you go forward. Your environment is evolving with you. As the environment's changing, you're evolving, and as you're evolving, the environment's changing. So change kind of brings change. And we're also trying to move from uncertainty with a prototype to greater certainty. It's not that we're ever going to have total certainty, but the prototype is now something that you can actually take to the market and get some answers. The prototype is often called the minimum viable product. And what we mean by the minimum viable product is you're not trying to create the perfect product. As I mentioned, there's going to be lots of reiterations. There's going to be lots of changes. You're just wanting to create something enough so that you can go out and test the market. And it's usually a small amount of things. Economically, you want to do this as cheaply as possible, and you want to do it as quickly as possible, because as I mentioned, there'll be information you're going to get feedbacks, you'll go back and you'll rework your prototype many times as you're going through this process. Something to test drive is really what you're looking at here. You just want something that you can take out and try. How much do you need as a prototype? Possibly it's just a sample of one, just so that you can actually go out and get some feedback and see and make some changes as you're going forward. In other cases, you may want, or in other situations, you may want a few cases of product so that you can actually go out and see what the market is going to say, or you may need a pallet of product, but you don't really need a whole lot of product to make this happen. You may want to get somebody else to make this for you. And in many cases, it's going to cost you a lot more to do this than it would once you're in full production. You also want to look at prototyping of the packaging. And the prototype is going to help you figure out how to package your product, because you can mock up the package and the labeling. It'll help you with the size of the product. Am I getting the size right? Is this the right size for the customer? It'll help me understand how to label it. And I'll learn some of these things as I'm going forward. I'll learn about logos and brands and how they fit on labels. And I'll look at what other people are doing and use that in my whole process as well. And you're also going to look at the circular economy. Like, is the product need to be recycled or recycle the packaging? So it's really important to look at all these things. The nutritional facts panel probably at this point is not as important, but it'll actually help you start to look at this so you understand the product and things as you're moving forward. I want to share with you just some ideas about prototyping here. And if you think about taking a basic product, and we look at broccoli here, and as broccoli kind of progresses and you want to make it into different kinds of products, the most basic product we're talking about here is the broccoli product that's on the left, in the top left. But as you go forward, you see that there's a shrink wrap around the product, and that was kind of driven by the need of originally broccoli was going to the stores in packs of ice, but the ice was melting on the floors and people needed to actually have something different. So they moved to a stretch product. And then that kind of went to, well, they didn't see the product as well. So they went to, the second was a shrink wrap. Going to the third one, as you go there, you see the product wasn't as easy to see in the shrink wrap. So they went to the stretch seal. And here's a different product again. Moving on to the florets, moving on to the mixed products. But you can see they're not expensive prototypes to be able to try these products. You can do these things to a large degree without making a big investment. If you're doing a full run of them, then you're going to have to invest in the machinery to make it happen, or the systems, and it gets more complicated. As you go up and even farther with this, and you're going into a super salad and a kit and more things, it gets more complicated, and it gets much more difficult to make a prototype for some of these things. So I'm just trying to share in the next few slides some of the pictures and ideas about prototyping and some of the products and the evolution. If you thought about with Griffin's here with their potatoes, and to be able to make a prototype of this product is not that complicated when you're a potato processor, and the risk is not that high when you start to look at it. But to be able to do something like this and try it makes a big difference in your business, where you've been able to take 3 potatoes and almost sell them for the price of what a bag of potatoes would be. So I want you to think about prototypes in lots of different ways and how you can do it. And that minimum viable prototype product is what you're trying to achieve in your prototype. If we looked at apples and we started to think about the basic apple, then we moved to up in the left-hand corner where we look at a packaged apple, where you take 6 apples and you package them into a different product. Now this is a different product again, it's a different idea. It's not that big of an investment to maybe do that at that point. So you can go out and test the market, and if it doesn't work, you go to something else. But as you move to the more complicated products, for example, the apple slices down below, it requires a lot more food safety and packaging and more investment. So to be able to do your prototypes and create the packaging to take it to market to try it gets a little bit more challenging, but you can always try the products first and then kind of keep moving things forward to the packaging as you go. It's a circular process. It's an evolutionary process as we go. And then if we're looking at a pie again, we're looking at a lot more work maybe with the formula and the recipe and the baking, but it's not that you can't do that in your kitchen, theoretically, to start, but as you're evolving to a larger process, it just kind of ups the ante all the time. Same with cider here. When we start about making sweet apple cider, that's easy to, I shouldn't say that's easy, but it's something that people can probably make at a smaller scale. Then you move to cider, harder cider, and that takes a different skill again and different resources and different equipment. When we go to Vivo, the water and juice with sparkling water and the juice, again, it takes a new level. You're starting to see that you're using a different kind of packaging as part of your promotional thing, which again takes some more resources and skills to move up. And then the Pomme d'Or, when you look at it as a liquor product, it takes you even longer maybe to make some of these things. So I guess the other thing I'd like to point out is at one end, it's maybe fairly quick to make. As you've moved to the other end, it takes much longer to make your prototypes. And you maybe need more help as you go. The same with blueberries. As you start to move through, you can take your regular blueberries and put them into a package is one thing, like the Millens have done here. And then you can move to some of these more processed products as you go farther. But some of them, again, are not that, do not take that long to make some prototypes to test them. And other ones, for example, like the Van Dyke's wild blueberry juice took a couple of years of research to get it where they wanted and to retain the antioxidants that were necessary. Maple syrup, again, you can start, and as you're moving through to try some of these different products, some of them are easier for you to do. Some of them are just maybe switching the packaging and changing that kind of thing. But as you're coming up with prototypes, some of them are possible on your own, and some of them you're going to need some help for. To get to these more advanced ones, this is where you start to bring in some other help and culinary experts to actually help you be able to make your prototypes of your products. Same with potatoes and potato chips. And you can see the evolution through some of these products as well. The original packages that came out from the covered bridge actually were potato chips inside, in a foil bag inside of a burlap bag, which was part of the marketing effort and the thing that sort of gave it the competitive advantage in the marketplace. And when you start to look at alcohol, for example, maybe it's fairly straightforward to make a beer and to play with those recipes. As you start to make some more complicated products, it gets harder. As you do some products, there's aging required, so it takes longer to even do your prototype. It may take you years in some cases to do your prototype. And then if you're doing something like a gluten-free beer, that is a totally different story again. You're going to need probably more help. And those are all the things that are going to, when you're looking at your prototype, determine whether you can do it fairly quickly or it's going to take you longer. And the process of what you're looking at in developing a product is going to be longer. And then there's also the experiences that you could have around agritourism. And I thought I'd put this slide in, for example, because if you're a farm business, these are it's a product that you're selling to people, but it can start small and you can test the market with a prototype of, maybe it's some very small experience of having people come to the farm and giving them an educational experience, or it could be very elaborate like the Saunders farm have here in Munster, Ontario, where it is it's almost like a theme park on the farm. And for the month of October, it's just amazing the number of people that would go through a place like this. But this is how you're scaling your prototypes, and your prototype helps you move your idea forward to something that's more successful. It's helping you validate those market opportunities as you go forward. And this is the big key in all these things that we're looking at with the prototype is, can it help me validate that market? Because we're trying to, the prototype is going to be something that you're going to take for a test drive. It's basically taking your product for a spin. If you went to buy a car, you probably wouldn't buy a car without taking it for a test drive and seeing how it works, but that's what we're doing with the product. The prototype is something you can go out and test in the market. You can test the segments or market groups of consumers to see their response and to get their feedback. And feedback is so important when we're at this stage, because it's going to help you mold that product and give you a much better product. It also confirms the formulation that you've developed or you're assuming, because sometimes we start with assumptions and then we go to get validations so that we find out whether somebody actually wants this product. And then we are going to validate, because it's really important to validate those opportunity assumptions and to find out how big the market is and if there really is a market opportunity and if this is worthy. And sampling is, if I make the relation to, is almost like a takeout. And if we look at when you come to a restaurant or a drive-through place, if you can actually go up and you can look at the menu, you can try some of the products before you actually have to go in the store or inside the restaurant. And sampling is one of those things that you use the prototype for so that you can get the full experience for people. People with food want to see that full sensory experience. They want to see food, they want to touch it, they want to smell it, they want to taste it. It doesn't do any good just saying, well, this tastes really good. I mean, if you're trying to describe how a product tastes to somebody, it's very difficult. So they need to try it. And when they try it, they buy it. And that's one of the rules you'll probably find in the food industry. And you need to build that market before you build that factory. And this is why I think the prototype is, you just need to focus on getting a prototype ready so that you can take to the market. You don't need to worry about making a big factory or anything at this point. It can start in your own kitchen. You can start in your grandma's kitchen. You can start in a community kitchen. There's lots of them around, like whether they're in fire halls or churches, a lot of those places are suitable to start. You can go to a pilot lab if you want to go to a little bit higher. I'm not sure why social media is in here, but it shouldn't be right there right now. Restaurants is another place that potentially you could go to and ask somebody in a restaurant to help you make that first product. And that might be something that you could partner with somebody to be able to develop your product. And you need to build these markets before you can go to like a farmer's market or people that have kitchens and just talk to them, and you'll be surprised that a lot of those places actually do make products for people, and at least on the pilot level side. Universities and colleges may have something. There's culinary programs at many universities and colleges, or a co-packer, and there are professional co-packing facilities out there that could help you out. So really what I'm suggesting here is try to build that market with your prototype and test out whether it's a worthy product to go forward before you build that factory. The question you're answering here with prototype is, this minimum viable product, is it enough to help you validate that market opportunity? Will that prototype be enough to help you validate that market opportunity? And it'll be something that you'll be testing and trying and reiterating as you're moving forward. So the next thing we're going to look at here is validation. And now you've got your prototype, you've got something to take to the marketplace, and now you want to validate that concept. Is your product idea or innovation worthy of further consideration? That's a huge question to answer here. And this is a stop and go process to a large degree, because if it isn't worthy, you're going to go back to the drawing board and you're going to make your prototype different or better, or you're going to take the feedback that you're going to get and go back and do it. Validation is like the canary in the coal mine. It's the opportunity to find out the little things that maybe you missed, or the problems that are going to blindside you or come along that you really weren't expecting. It helps you test and confirm your assumptions, because you're moving forward based on a lot of assumptions, and you're really trying to prove whether these hypotheses that you have are true and real. So you need a prototype to be able to do that. You need to go out and test with the people, get some feedback, see what they think, and then confirm that this is worthy to move to a next step and to go forward. You want to determine the size of the opportunity. Validation helps you do that. And you want to learn from the market as well. You want to learn the business metrics, because as you're going through this, you're going to learn some things about business that you didn't know. And as you're trying, you'll learn how this whole process works in the marketplace and the rules that are there. And you want to align your products with the customer benefits. So validation helps you make sure that your product aligns with the benefits the customer's expecting. And you also want to gain insights into what they really want. And by taking a product and putting it in front of people, it's very easy to get that feedback. And you're going to be able to explore market channels that maybe you hadn't even thought about once you have a product. Validation reduces the risk for you. It's the small step, or small comfort step, I guess we'd say here, before you get to the big step investment. So if you can do this step-by-step or incremental steps and get validated along the way, then when you make the big step and the big investment, it doesn't feel so scary. And you want to learn what you don't know. And as I've probably said this over and over, you're going to learn things as you go forward that you had no idea. Is it a customer problem we're solving? And I've asked this question many times here, but it's so important. Is the customer problem that my product is going to solve worth solving? Is it worth my time doing this? Is there a profit return here? I want to quickly mention protect the idea, because lots of times when people are out validating the product, they worry about this and protecting the intellectual property. And you can always go get the non-disclosures agreements and get some people to sign these things if someone's manufacturing for it or manufacturing it for you. But I'd suggest you talk to a professional about this. But a lot of people don't worry about these things so much at this point, because the product is still going to change so much, and it's going to be reiterated and moved and modified and made better as it's going forward. And lots of people keep food products, for example, a secret recipe. They just don't share it because they don't bother getting patents for them, because when you put patents on something, you have to tell everybody what's in it, and that kind of gives the prize or the story away sometimes. And you might want to protect yourself. Insurance liability, you should look into this. What's your risk tolerance? Sometimes your insurance that you already have may cover some of these things, but when you're going out and testing food with people, there always is a risk. Somebody could break a tooth, or somebody could get sick, and potentially somebody could sue you. So find out what's needed, check with your professionals, make sure that as you're going through this, that you have the protection that you do need. There's a validation conundrum here, and Henry Ford says it pretty well. He says if I asked them what they wanted, they would have said a faster horse. So asking people what they want sometimes is very difficult. That's why you need to have the prototype. You need to show them what you want. And that's what Steve Jobs is saying, is people don't know what they want until you actually show it to them. So the prototype is so important for that you have something, you have a tool that you can go out and show people. I want to do a couple little myth busters here as we're going through, and I know we're going through a lot of things quickly here today, but there's a lot to cover. They said it was so. So who said it was so? People will tell you things when you're with your new product or about products or opinions all the time. And you really don't want to fall into those traps all the time. You want to really test your products with people that really know. Take it to the people that can really give you the decent answers, the real answers. And those are the ones that will sort of help you move forward as in the best manner, I guess is what I'm saying here. Give me the money and leave me alone. I mean, sometimes people just say, oh, I want a grant. I want some money to be able to do this. Just leave me alone. But you do need to have some help on all these stages as you're going forward, because there's so many things that you don't know. You really probably just don't know some of these things as you're moving forward. And I would suggest we're going to talk about it a little bit later, but who can help you? And it's really important there. And build it and they will come. I've talked about this before as well. Just because you make this product doesn't mean people are going to come. You've got to have a product target for it. So that's really key and important. And then my product is unique. And I've heard this so many times from people like, oh, my product is so unique. But actually, once you actually take the prototype out into the market and start to validate, you find that there's other products out there that you actually didn't even know about. The trick is, don't worry if there's other products out there, just make yours better. And that's the goal that you're trying to do here. The key elements that you have to look at in validating here is be objective. So ditch the ego, get any ego that you've got. You want to know anything that somebody's going to say about your product. You want the good, the bad, and the ugly. Embrace that feedback. Listen really closely to what they say. The old saying, we have 2 ears and 1 mouth. So we need to be listening more than we, ask questions and then listen for some answers. Don't take anything personal. Be like the duck, the water running off your back. You want all the feedback that you can at this point. It's better to have it early than later. And everyone has an opinion. The opinion that you really want to focus on is the one of the person that's actually buying your products in the test markets, so that you can get the real feedback that they're putting their own money out. And those are the opinions that really count. And the product is not for everyone. And we've talked about this before. Again, in the earlier webinar, is your product can't be for everybody. It has to be targeted to a specific segment. So that's what your prototype is helping you figure out. What is that segment that this product is validated in? And then we need to assess the competition. And that's important as well, because what's the competition doing? When you have a prototype product, you can go compare it to other things. You can see what the marketplace is doing, and you can get some really good feedback. The validation, there's a validation interview cheat sheet in the resource guide that you can download, and Emily's going to give you the link to this at the end of this webinar. So that'll help you actually when you go out and start talking to people. Ways to validate. You have families. Those are people that you can start with, but sometimes you have to be careful with their opinions. They're a little biased sometimes. Existing customers, you can take your products there. Community groups, you can take your farmers, your product to farmers markets and the farmers market network, and they're awesome. Sensory labs, focus groups, and take them to other customers, for example, that you don't know, like brokers and distributors and wholesalers and retailers, and see what kind of opinions you can get. And then even try social or online options, because maybe you can get people to fill out a survey if they actually are interested in trying your product, and maybe you can mail it to them if you can't get it to them any other way, and they can try it. The farmers market, I'll just quickly show a couple pictures here, but this is one of the places that's the most awesome place to test a product, because you can put all your products out in front of people. You don't actually have to go through all the advanced labeling to find out what people like and to validate them quickly. And you can look at these face-to-face contact. You can ask people right one-on-one, what do you think about it? How do you like this product? Will you buy it again? Where do you use it? And those are in that checklist that I was saying that you can download later. Some really good questions that'll help you here. The competitor assessment is one that you need to look at here in that what's the competitor's products out there? What's the target market for that customer is going after? What are the market channels that they're using? What are their distribution logistics? What are their packages and sizing? What's their pricing? The produce, or do they produce it themselves, or do they co-pack it? What are their marketing strategies? And what are the capabilities and capacity? And these are all things that will help you understand whether you can compete with them and you can actually use this information to develop your products. And business validation is an important thing you need to look at here too. Don't forget there's always a business. Product's not a business. You always have to be building your business. Do we have the people and skills to make this product? Do we have the resources and the money? Can we scale it to profit? Do we have the time and energy? And is this opportunity good for our business? And these are all key questions that I think you need to think about as you're going forward. And you know, these are all the underlying ones that are going to make you successful. Do you have more certainty in your new product now after you've been through this validation process? Because the validation process, as you go through and ask these questions, and many you'll find that information in that resource guide, it will help you decide whether you go forward or you go backward to a new product prototype, or maybe you just ditch this product altogether and start all over again. Fail forward fast is the motto that we have here, and it will help you be more successful in the end. Establishing price, and it's one of the hardest things and the most important things for a business to do. And when you're validating things and looking at those opportunities out there, you need to look at the price as well. And pricing is a game of perceived value. Your job is the never-ending work to advance your customers' willingness to pay a price that reflects the true value of your product. So you're always constantly working to evaluate or to advance that customer's interest in your product and help them see more value so that they're willing to pay a better price for your product, and you're differentiating your product in the marketplace. Price is how you capture your product's value, and price is what the customer pays, and value is what they get in return. So price is really an important aspect to all products. Price it too high and they're not going to look at your product. They're going to say they'll just pass it by. Price it too low and they probably won't take you seriously. You get the price wrong, you could be out of business in a very short period of time, but you get the price right, and that's where you get to be very happy and move things forward and to be able to create incomes that allow your business to grow and develop. The progression of value is a really important thing here to look at in pricing as well, in that you're trying to move from commodity to a higher product experience, which is going to pay more. So up the left side is returns and along the bottom side is value. As you move from commodity and start to differentiate your product, you can charge more of a price. As you move up the value adding and changing your product to a new form, you can add more. But as you tie those experiences into it as well, then you're going to have a really higher value product, and you can charge more for your product. Pricing success strategies. You need to understand your target customer really well. You need to set the price for the customer, not the product. So what will that customer pay? Not what that product is potentially somebody thinks it's worth, because it may be worth more to the customer. You want to differentiate and add value, as that chart showed. You want to strive for those memorable experiences and those customer connections so you can charge more. And you want to be able to deliver more than was expected. Markup and margin. I'm going to go through this very quickly. I'm sorry I'm going through some of this fairly quickly now, but if you want to know more about pricing, go to the webinar that we did about a month ago, Pricing for Profit, Understanding Margins, and you'll get this a little bit better. But markup and margins are important because they're misunderstood terms. Margins are the language of retailers because they're mostly concerned about the profit they make on the selling price, not the cost of the product. So margins are calculated from the selling price backwards. Markups are usually the language of suppliers because they're mostly interested in how much profit you can mark up over your costs. So they're looking from the cost and marking it up. So there's a difference in the two, and there's a difference in the price that you could end up with in the end. So if we use these are examples of calculating margins and markups, and I think they're in those resource guides for you as well. But if you use margins and you actually calculated a $2 cost and went up to a $3.50 selling price, your margin is 43%. But if you used a $2 cost and you used a markup model and you're going to sell it for $3.50 again, now your markup is 75% to get there. So there is a difference, and the big issue here is if you're talking the language of your retailer and you're thinking the language of the supplier, you could be off in the money that you're talking about here, and you could make some miscalculations when you're trying to price your product. So I would suggest you really try to understand these really well. You need to understand your real costs as you're going through this as well when you're pricing. And don't just guess that this is the price that the marketplace is offering out there. You need to know labor. You need to know your product. You need to know your freight, your overhead. Your debt level is going to make a big difference because everybody has a different debt level, and that determines their cost of production. And marketing and sales, they're all costs that you have to consider when you're pricing your product. Is your price right? And how you look at this is, are people giving you checks? Are they buying your product? Are you making a profit at what you're doing? Can you pay your bills? Are your sales growing? And are you solving an important customer problem? Can we make this price work for us? And that's the big one that you're looking at here. What happens if I drop my price? And I'm going to throw a couple of things in here quickly, but if your gross margin is 40%, which isn't off for a lot of people, and you drop your selling price by 10%, then you need to increase your sales by 33.3% to make the same gross profit. So you want to get your price right in the beginning so that you're not trying to discount or drop your price, because it has a big impact on the amount of products that you have to sell and your profitability in the long term. So it's very important to use your prototype products to validate your opportunities and to validate your price as much as you can, the price range at least of what the people will pay. And they will pay more. If you think about Tim Hortons coffee, people pay a lot more. I mean, it's probably more than a barrel of oil these days that you can pay for Tim Hortons coffee. But water and all these things, like, people pay a lot for things that they can make at home or they could get for free in lots of cases. And they will pay for things if they can see the value. So you need to show people the value in the products that you're producing, and the price will follow from there. Grocery margins, I'm going to go through this quickly again, but this is just a picture of what's going on at the grocery store that you need to consider when you're looking at pricing your products. Is what is the margin that, for example, the grocery store is going to get. And the next example I'm going to show you here will help out a little bit here. Wet my beak. And I always think about the Godfather movie, and Vito Corleone is when he's first talking to one of the Dons when he's very young, and the Don's going, well, I just need a little bit to wet my beak. Because what's happening here is, as you go through the value chain, everybody needs to get something because they're doing a function. So the money just kind of keeps moving forward. And as you can see, your product, and then the customer is, you're trying to get some money out of it, or the supplier actually is selling you products that you're value adding or changing to something else and to get more money. And then your broker may be in there for 5 or 10%. And then there's a distributor that could be in there for 20 or 30%. And then a retailer's in there for 35 to 50%. And then it comes up with a product that you're going to be selling to the end consumer. So what you can see as you go through this model is that, what I produce it for has to work in the marketplace as well. So it's always good to go to look at what that product can sell for and work yourself backwards to what you can sell it for if you're involving all these people in the chain. And sometimes people skip all this and they go direct to the consumer so that they can capture all that value themselves. But there is a cost because you do have to do all those functions. And to calculate margin and markup, there's a little SKU food calculator here that I'm not going to give it all away, but if you're actually coming to our 4th webinar, Emily's going to give you a little way that you can actually get one of these for yourself. So I'm not going to say any more. I'm not going to spill the beans, but come to some of our next webinars and you can get one of these. Can you manufacture your product for the price a market is willing to pay? And that is really the most important thing here. We need to say, can I produce this product? And this is why I'm looking for this price. I'm trying to go out and test and validate that price as well, because I want to make sure that I can make it for what it's going to cost or what it can sell for in the marketplace, because you can't sell something for twice as much as what the market's willing to pay. You need to be able to figure this all out, and it helps you establish your business process, and how you're going to make this whole product. My father gave me some advice when I was young, and as dads, sometimes you never take your dad seriously at the time, but it was the most important lessons in life come after you think you know everything. And most of us are probably pretty familiar with that one. But you need to get help. And if you think you know everything, you're wrong when you're developing new products. It takes a village to raise a child, maybe. It takes a village to develop a product. It takes a lot of people, a lot of perspective, and don't be scared about going and asking people and trying to get as much information and help as you can. And most people will be quite willing to help and share with you. There's a 360-degree view that sometimes you can only have a straight ahead view, and you need that whole 360-degree view to make it work good for you, and to make sure you're not falling into some bad pitfalls here. You're going into uncharted territory in most cases, and sometimes other people don't even know the things, but at least together you can solve some of these problems. Getting help reduces your risk. There's no doubt about it. That's one of the best things you can do, to get help, and it'll reduce your risk. And it also brings in experience and expertise to be able to help you do that as well. So getting help, what are some of the things you might need to get help with? Well, product formulation is a big one. You know, sometimes it's difficult to just get that product right. That prototype, getting that prototype made, I don't have the resources to make it happen. Sensory and validation are all great places to get help. Packaging and labeling, scaling production, assessing programs and funding. You know, who can help me find some money for this? Nutritional facts panels are always a big one. The business, running the business and operating the business. Regulations, intellectual property protection, food safety, you know, those pilot runs, risk management are things, shelf assessment, marketing and sales, and the business model are all things that people can help you with. And if you don't know all these things, I suggest you go out and find some people to help you do these. So who can help? Here's a little table, kind of how I always usually do it, is you list down one side the people that can help you, and there's external people and internal people that can help you. The internal people are your family, your friends, and your staff. And then there's external people, which are business associates, advisors, consultants, academia, mentors. Those are all people that could help you. Make a list. What skills do they have? And what resources could they bring to my project? And then it'll help you choose the people that maybe you need to have on your team and to build your product development team. Now I'm going to ask Emily, if she's there, to talk about the Perennia resources and what they could actually offer you in a couple of the next slides here. Emily?
Yep. So just in the question of where to get help, I wanted to put a few slides up of Perennia services. And we have three main departments, which includes the agriculture extension team, and you can see some of their services the team provides on this slide. And then on the next slide, Gary, we also have a team of food safety specialists, and they can help you have a safe food product produced in plants with the appropriate food safety programs. So they can help you get those programs, the assessments, even prepare for audits. And then on the next slide, our other team, of course, is product development, which I'm on, and we can help with all the services on the slide as well. And I did want to say, if you happen to be working with Nova Scotia Agriculture or Seafood, we do have funding available for all of our services. And in the resources I'll be sending you today, I'm going to also include our brochure on funding programs. So if anybody has any questions about the funding programs, how to access them, or maybe getting in contact with the right person for that program, feel free to reach out to me. At the end of this webinar, there will be my contact information on the screen. But just a quick little demo of the services we provide on our few different departments.
Thank you, Emily. So the question is, do you know where you need to get some help? You can go out and look for help. There's lots of agencies out there to help you. I would say starting with Perennia would be a really great place, or start with some of your local departments of government. And there's a lot of resources out there to help you move your ideas forward. We've covered a lot today in today's webinar, and I've gone through things fairly quickly, but there's so many things when you start to talk about product development, and trying to squeeze them down into four workshops has or little webinars has been a challenge. But there's lots of things I wanted to cover and make sure that you had there, and you can actually go back and watch the video again of the webinar if you'd like to, get some more points, or you can always give me an email, and you'll see my contacts shortly here of what is possible. But I'd like to just go back and reiterate that we've looked today at the prototype, and It's important to get a proper prototype for your product and get something all established that, made that you can go out and you can test and validate that market opportunity, because there's nothing worse than actually spending a lot of time, money, and resources building products that nobody wants to buy. So the prototype in the product development is the process of taking that idea, transforming it into a product that is of value that somebody does really want to buy, and validating it. So you've validated the opportunity with some customers, you've looked at the price, you've thought about what's the competitive environment that's out there, and you've looked at who can help you develop and take this product forward. So the next step would be that we want to look at is taking this product to the next level. And we're going to look at essential plans. Like, what are the plans that you need to be able to help you get to that next level? So that's what our webinar next week is going to be, on essential plans. And the following one after that is going to be aim and fire, which is launching your product into the market. So we're assuming that you've been able to follow through from your idea to the product today, and now you're ready, that you've got to go a little bit deeper. You found something, you validated this product, you know that you want to go forward, you have some confidence, you've moved from uncertainty to more certainty, and now you're ready to take that product to the next step. So that's what our next webinar is going to do for you. The product development resource guide that is available, that Emily's going to put up the address for you, or the link. It's going to cover idea to market success map. It's going to show you, have a little information in there about why new products fail and how not to. There's a product prototype key question guide. So when you're developing your prototype, there's some questions to go through. Product packaging key questions that you need to be thinking about. Pricing for profit tip sheet. And if you want more information, go back to the Pricing for Profit Understanding Margins webinar, which was done about a month ago. There's a Getting Help fact sheet that goes through some of the things that you need to do. There's a product validation checklist, and there's a new product validation interview cheat sheet. And this is the sheet that you'd use that if you're at a farmer's market and you're, for example, and we're taking your product to people, these are some of the questions you would ask to gather the information that's really useful as you're developing your product. So we're at the point where we could take some questions. Emily?
So none of it are in yet, but if you have a question for Gary or myself, please use the Q&A button, which is at the bottom of your window, and type it in and we will answer it. And if you do have any questions after this webinar, our contact information is on the screen, and you can feel free to email one or both of us, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can with those as well.
And as Emily said, I'm very glad to, if you want to email me or contact me through LinkedIn, very glad to talk to you about this process and share with you some more ideas. And as I mentioned, it is a challenging process. I've spent many years working with people to come up with new product ideas, to take them through that development phase and to take them to the marketplace. And many of them have been successful. I mean, there's been some that haven't worked out along the way. But that's the part of the process that we're looking at here. And it's why I'm not focusing on the product as much in this webinar series, because I believe that most of you have a product idea, or you're going to go and develop that with somebody else. But it's all these other things around it that make people successful. It's the business, looking at the business, looking at what is it you want to get out of this, because it's a big venture that you're going into. What does the customer want? What's it going to take to make this product? Then we're going to start to look at, if you've got to get it into the marketplace, how do we get it into the marketplace? And how do we build those relationships to keep those sales? And then finally, how do you grow that product on so that you can actually go on to other products, or maybe retire at some point in the future?
Okay, so we have a couple questions. The first one is, where are the resources mentioned available? And those will come in an email later today from myself, and it'll be a PDF attachment that you just download. And then the next question here, Gary, is how many market segments should I ID? Is one enough, or should I look for more segments?
I would start with one market segment first, because that's going to be, you want to validate. That's the one that you're assuming. The one that you start with is probably the one you're assuming that is the one that's for your product. And what you'll learn from that is that if your assumptions are right. Is this really the right segment for my market? Or the customers are going to tell you information that you'll determine this isn't the right segment. There's no harm in trying a couple of different segments if you want to start off with, but everyone is going to take resources and time, and just depends on how much time and resources that you actually have. But I would suggest the best thing is like do one at a time, evaluate it, look at, you know, what worked out, what went well with this, what's going to work well in this segment, what's not so good in this segment, and, you know, maybe how could we make it work in that segment first. It's better to just exhaust all the options in something before you go to the next one sometimes, because you can be very easily chasing shiny objects, and people will come along and say, hey, here's the market, this is where it should be. But the best way to validate a product of any kind is when the customer actually gives you money. And that's the person that you want to really listen to, that person that's willing to buy your product. And more important, if they come back and buy that product again, you know, ask them questions about how they're using it. What are they doing with it? Where do they normally buy a product like this? And what are the alternative products that they might have? Because it gives you so much information when you're trying to validate your product.
Okay, we have another question, and it's, what is the best way for farmers markets to support their entrepreneurs who are in the developing stage?
Well, I think the best way that farmers markets could support their entrepreneurs in that development stage would be to have a kiosk at the market where it's kind of the new product kiosk, and people get to know that that's a new product kiosk, and they go over there to try those things. And through that process, the market could actually give people a process, their vendors a process, or the people that are developing those new products. They could have a standard process that here's the questions that you need to be asking people. Here's how you evaluate the feedback. Here's how you get your products ready to be able to test. This is the kind of sampling that you need to be able to do to get the best feedback from people. And I've done that with a number of products over the years with people at the markets. And it's just amazing the feedback that you can get at a farmer's market and what people are willing to give you. They want to help you succeed. They want you to go forward. But if there's no place to really do it, and if they know that there's a common place, like this is the standard place, this is our new product place, this is the kiosk where we go try new things, and it would just be amazing to, I think people would start to come and go, and they want to see the new products that are out there. And it would be an opportunity for the market to actually challenge vendors on an ongoing basis to create new products and put them at this kiosk to get some evaluation and help them move their products forward as well. So.
Great. A question here I can answer is, where can I find the recorded presentations? And that answer is on Perennia's YouTube channel. So we are posting the recorded videos. There's a playlist for it called the Idea to Market playlist. And for the one that Gary was referencing earlier, the Pricing for Profit, that was a part of our last series, which was Take Your Product to Market. And those are all up on YouTube already, so you can go and find those. Now they're all there. And the Idea Development one is already up, and we will have the product development up before next week's webinar. So you can they're all on the YouTube channel. And then the next question here, Gary, is, are you selling your product during validation, or should you expect to give it away for free in exchange for feedback?
Well, there's 2 points here. I think there's a stage that you would probably be giving it away for free to be able to get some feedback to start. But you're also going to want to get to a point where you're going to try to sell it so that you can get a validation of the pricing, get an idea of what people are prepared to pay for pricing. Just to ask them about what they're prepared to pay is totally different than them actually paying you for it. And people, if you go back to Henry Ford, this quote there, if you ask people what they want, they're probably going to tell you that they want a faster horse. If you ask people how much they pay for something, that's not necessarily the same amount that they would actually physically pay. So I'm really big on, one, maybe in the early stages that you're trying it out with a lot of people, you're sharing it with as many people as you can to get that first level of feedback. But by the time you get to the second level and you're starting to look at maybe putting some packaging together with it and those things, I don't think it's unreasonable to ask for that product, to buy that product. And you're going to be testing some different prices. So you may be selling it at a few different prices just to get an idea of what people will pay. for those products.
Great, thanks. We have one more question, and if you did have a question on your mind, do submit it now. We just have a few more minutes left in the webinar. But this one is a little bit of a loaded one. And
Okay.
How do you think the pandemic will change agriculture in Nova Scotia?
Whoa.
Yeah.
that is a big one. I think it's going to make a big difference, and everything is going to change. And the way we evolve and eat food, I mean, you'll probably see an awful lot more online things happening. I think, services like the in our area here, the Wolf of Farmers Market with their online service is just an awesome way for people to be able to get products. And you're noticing that seniors, for example, they have a harder job. I've noticed in the grocery store, like, seniors are out trying to get groceries, and they're almost panicking in the whole process of trying to get around safely and all those kind of things, and even just get products to them. So I think that's going to change everything from a food delivery side. And the pandemic is probably going to push food safety even higher. Like, I think it's always been a big issue, but if people haven't been taking food safety seriously, I think there's no doubt that they have to look at food safety, and they have to ensure that their food's safe and do all the processes and the systems that they need to make sure it's safe. But I think people have to eat, and it's probably going to really push local food a lot more as well. If you thought about right now, if for some reason, when you start to see the food shortages in the US, you start to see the lineups at the food bank, if for some reason, and you see the problems down there with the farm workers and the food plants closing down. So if they can't get the workers, it's going to limit the supply, and the supply has to come from imported products, has to come from Mexico or the southern US all the way up here, and it has to go by possibly hungry people. And that may mean that it just doesn't get here. So I think in the long term, we need to be investing into our local food supply more, sustainability of those local food products, and need to be supporting the people. And invariably, we're probably going to be paying more for food as a result, but we probably already don't pay enough for food, because I think if we were paying more for food, then it would solve a lot of the problems that we do have here. It's just one of those things that as we move forward, I think we can't get away of not having food available. I think food products are going to be more, developing new products is probably going to be more of an interest as well, because people are going to be looking for a variety of the things that we do have locally. So, and to be able to give year round, for example, value added products allow you to have year round supply of some of these products. So that's going to be really important as we move into the future. So that's just my opinion in all this, but I think it's going to change everything in the long term. And I think it can change for the good in the long term. And there'll be something good come out of all this for local farmers and the local food industry.
Thanks for answering that one. That was a little challenging. Well, just one last question here before we'll close it off. And it's on that note, what would be some of the recommended forms of validation for product testing when social distancing regulations are in place and demos currently aren't allowed at the retail level or at farmers markets?
That one is a tough one. And I guess the way that I was thinking about this one, because I figured somebody would probably ask it at some point, but I think this is where you have to get creative, and maybe you can use social media that you can, possibly you have to mail some of these samples off to people, in some of these early stages. We have to remember this is probably not going to last forever. And, we're going to get back to some more form where we can have some closer contact with people or smaller groups of people. And the groups that you're testing with, you just may have to do more group testing of smaller groups of people, but it's not impossible to get creative in thinking about, I could deliver something to a group of people that are 6 feet apart and they could still try these products. And maybe through social media, you can contact people and you can, like I said, maybe possibly mail it to them or those kind of things. But remember, in the early stages, you're really trying to find out all the key things you're not necessarily trying to refine the product down or all the little final touches. You're trying to get the basic ones out of the way. Like, is this taste good? Or do people like this product at all. I mean, if you're coming up with a real strange thing, you may have to educate people a lot. But it does give you a lot more time in this environment to be able to connect with people and talk with them about your product on social media. And at the very least, I'd be talking with people and hyping up my product and saying, this is what I'm working on. This is the greatest product that I've got going out there. This is the new thing. And, start to collect an email list of people that are interested in this product. And when it's available, then you'll contact them and ask them to sample it for you. And, now's the time to use social media and those things to build your list and build your following and start to build the brand for your product if you want as well. So, and to get feedback, you can ask people, hypothetically about products, like what do you like about these kind of products? What don't you like? It's a little hard to do that sampling as we mentioned, but it's probably not impossible if you think about it. So that's the best answer I have for you right at this moment.
Yeah, that was another hard one to answer.
Yeah.
Thanks, Gary, for presenting today. The question wasn't answered, or you think of something after this session, see Gary and I's contact information on the screen. Feel free to email us your questions. However, today was not the last webinar. We do have 2 more in this series. So please join us again next Thursday at noon. And as I said before, the first webinar along with our last series are already on our YouTube channel. So please go check those out there. Thanks to all of you for joining us today. The next webinar is next Thursday at noon. Please come. It's on essential plans required for a product launch. You can find information for this webinar along with the rest of the series on Perennia's online learning page. Okay, thanks for coming.
Thank you very much, everyone, for coming. See you next week.